I'm Justin Perkins. This is Talk Junkie. That is a new song. That's usually the outro song. Had a little issue with songs and things of that nature. I know you guys are probably used to like 5 of these a week sometimes. When we first started, I got mixed reviews on that. Some people say you were putting out too much. Some people said it was enough. I'm going to try to save it. And even if I do a bunch in one week, not put them all out in that week. Plus, the work situation's changed temporarily, so that's I don't have the long travel and the opportunity to do them as frequently. So we're going to see where that gets us. I've had a lot of good feedback though, a lot of positive feedback, a lot of interaction, and that's been fun. I've noticed doing them less frequently. Obviously less interaction, but like I said, I think it's working out good. They get one, you get all kinds of different stuff. People saying you're too serious, people saying you're not, whatever. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the way everything's going. That's not what this whole episode's going to be about. I just want to say some stuff at first. If you're looking for another local podcast, especially if you're from the area I'm in, or you're just looking for something that'll give you a laugh and it's funny and irreverent and fun to listen to, found another podcast called Raving Television Addict. It's Brad and a guy named Mug that I knew from school. It's funny. It's good. It's definitely entertaining, and I've not missed one yet. And it's been like a mine are always different. This one's kind of like a weird combination. He done a couple right back to back that were really informative, like in-depth retro cartoon ones, which I really liked. And then they come back with just kind of like an open forum conversation, which I like even better, the last couple. So definitely check those out. I know it's up on iTunes. Check out his YouTube page. Dude's got views. He's got some stuff up there, some hard to find stuff from movies and stuff like that. He's got he did a YouTube series called I think it was Angry Movie Nerd, that was really good, that I liked. But definitely check that out. Check out your local podcast. Weird Appalachia is a local podcast for this area that's really good, that I've liked a lot of what I've heard on it, and it's definitely very different from what I do, and I really like it. I think podcast is the new the new form of expression. I mean, you imagine the capabilities we have now technologically. Like we say, everybody has a voice, and that's not always a good thing. Well, it's not if you just let the wrong people have the voice all the time, but it's good to have different opinions and thoughts and things out there, and having people have the ability to express themselves. So I think that's pretty good. Red Spotted Newt, Hazard, Kentucky. It's READ, Red Spotted Newt. Bookstore in Hazard, Kentucky. It's open. Stop and check them out. It's the only place in Eastern Kentucky right now that my books are available. You can get Coal Kingdom, Everyone's Different Just Like Me, and The Boy with Superheroing, all there. Like I said, it's the only place you can get them. If you don't live close enough to get them locally, which I suggest you do get them there, but if you don't, you can get them on Amazon. I think they're up for Prime. They're on Prime right now with free shipping. So that's only if you live away from here. If you live close enough to go to Red Spotted Newt, you don't go, you're disowned. Okay. I was having a serious thought this past weekend. And this question just arose to me. Where have all the rebels gone? Where's all the rebellion? And at first this may seem like a dig or a slight at someone I really, really respect, but it's not. I purchased Rage Against the Machine tickets this past week. They were extremely expensive. People are extremely mad. They're saying that it makes Rage Against the Machine a consumerism band, and They're raging with the machine, and I've heard all kinds of wonderful things. I think that this is what happens with this is a highly anticipated tour, highly anticipated shows. This is something that people really want to see. I honestly believe Rage Against the Machine had the ideal of, let's try to use the show to raise some money, which they did. They raised $3 million for various organizations. Let's try to find a way to beat scalpers, which I think they did put a big dent in scalpers. I think they didn't take into account the algorithm stuff from Ticketmaster, but basically they came out with what people consider an overpriced ticket. I also bought tickets to Deftones this past week. My floor tickets for Deftones were $60 a ticket. My lower arena, but barely lower arena tickets for Rage were $125, but that's because that's all I could get to, and all their tickets for the most part, other than some specialty tickets they put back, some charity tickets, were $125. Now, the Rage tickets didn't go on sale till Thursday. They were people selling them online on Monday and Tuesday. They weren't really, they were speculatively selling them. And selling them for big prices. And Rage addressed that. So the issue, I guess, for most fans is that the tickets cost too much. Which I agree. They're extremely, extremely expensive. Those are ticket prices at the level of, Guns N' Roses. Bands that are just doing it purely for the money. For pop acts. Those are not as expensive, but they're close to being as expensive as Justin Bieber tickets. People that do not do it for the music. They 100% do it for the money. And I don't respect that. And I do think that Rage probably should have had them a little cheaper. Again, they spent a lot of the money went to charities, but or to help different organizations, nonprofits and stuff. But probably went about it wrong, and I don't think it was completely intentional. I don't think it was a big money grab for them. Because if they wanted to make a money grab, they'd have been making albums for the last 20 years, and they've not been. But I think to a lot of people on one side of the spectrum, Rage Against the Machine represents this rebellious fighters point of view, like this we will not go quietly into the night stand, and those groups, we're gonna be honest, those groups exist for all sides. I believe the Tea Party was a rallying cry for a certain sector of Republicans who felt that for whatever reason their party wasn't representing them. I believe democratic socialism is the same thing. We're very tribal, and that's very sad. But we are. It's no doubt part of human evolution, part of human nature to be so tribal, to be divided into such things. But one thing has been consistent from really recorded history. There's always the rebel. There's always the standout, and there's always the person who questions the status quo, who questions the establishment, who questions the accepted narrative. I keep these fairly short now, and so try to. There will be longer ones here and there. We'll do a deep dive on those people one of these days where we'll go back through history, we look in modern history, and we have a lot of those people. The problem with being a rebel, so to speak, is you get tied into a cause, a movement, maybe something that's even good, and you still have human baggage. You're still human. You still make mistakes, and those mistakes are often overlooked or those mistakes become to define the movement in which you stood with. That's just the nature of how things work, how we work as people. But to me, there's always been, in my lifetime, I was born in 82, there's always been this rebellion, so to speak. In the 80s, it was the punks with Reagan. In the 90s, were the Rage Against the Machine type people like myself. That's what I was like in the 90s. Against establishment, period. Almost anarchist in a way. Much like the punk movement. Which, Zach De La Roche come out of a punk and hardcore background. But as a society, we're kind of built that way. We're built to have the establishment, and the establishment runs the day-to-day life. And a built-in factor of that is rebellion. But not just for us, not just for us here. It's the same. It was the same in Cuba. They had an established machine, and then you had Castro and you had Che, and they overturned the machine, and then in turn they became the machine. I respect a lot of people from a lot of movements. I don't understand this love for Che Guevara. It doesn't make sense. I don't understand this desire for young people for communism. It doesn't make sense. It could be my time here. It could be my time in America has tainted me. See, I enjoy my freedoms, and there are things about capitalism I do not like. But I feel it's an easier system to work within and try to get change. But that's what the rebels are for, right? That's what these people are for. That's what these people who young men and women like myself, when I was 16, 17 years old, looked to and wanted change. When I was 16 and NAFTA was getting passed, and you read the real facts on NAFTA, and what it done to Zapista property and natives in Mexico, and then later working at a car dealership and receiving antifreeze from Mexico, and it was eating engine blocks or something like that, not due to the chemicals in the antifreeze, but due to the chemicals in the water that they put in the antifreeze. Chemicals that I'm assuming were put there by companies who went down after NAFTA, and then after that, you had the Bush years, and Cheney is a scary human being. I mean, his power, his influence, his stroke, and what he was able to do is a scary, scary situation. And then you go into the Obama years, and Obama was bombing people with drones at a level never before seen. In fairness, the technology had never been to that level. But the percentage of innocents killed, they were just killing innocent people. They were very seldomly hitting the accurate target, the right target. And that was an atrocity that needed to be spoken against. It's harder to speak against that because of his political leaning, and then you get to our current state, and I don't know. I assumed that this current administration and the way things would go, I hate getting into political stuff, would result into intelligent and calculated rebellion, but instead we get democratic socialist. You know? So I wonder, have I changed that much as a person? Or has rebellion always been so hypocritical and so so much like the thing it's rebelling against? You see, I'm a huge proponent of free speech and free expression. And conservatism and the religious right have always been kind of, you know, you take the 80s and the Nixon time. You had Tipper Gore and people like that trying to get these, you know, ratings on albums and stuff like that. But it was largely a religious run and not a party run movement. But if it had to pick a party, it was most definitely going to go publicly to the Republicans. And I've always felt that way. I watched a documentary not too long back called The Family that showed me I was very much wrong. That there is no longer a separation of church and state, and to me that is a dangerous thing. But this loss of free speech, I always expected to come from the far, far right, when it's coming from the far, far left. And I always looked to the people slightly left of center as a guide in what to stand against and where to rebel. And I feel that the center left has moved to the right, and the center right has moved to the right, and the far right has moved to the right. And the far left, they don't know where they're going. As long as we don't go with them, I don't care. I don't really want to go with any of these people. But the notion of rebellion, the notion of standing up against injustice, is wrong in the way it's being performed now. It's gone. It's non-existent. Now, we look at mass shootings, okay? We break this down any way we want to break it down. The problem is, in most cases, the shooters are Caucasians, young males with mental health issues. And that needs to be addressed. Now, I did have someone tell me that they were all white because of their white privilege. But see, that kind of ignorance doesn't help us to grow or fix or change anything. It just breeds more ignorance. But we will look at that issue and not look at it as a whole. We politicize it. Both sides, not just one side, both sides. We politicize it and make it about the gun. We pad the pockets of the NRA, and we pad the ratings of the news organizations, and we make it a gun debate and not a mental health debate, not a debate on any other front. Now, there's another form of gun crime that may not get as many, but sometimes it does. And it happens far more often. What we call mass shootings, for whatever reason, the way we define that and the way we acknowledge that publicly are two sometimes different things. When the media or people in general say mass shootings, they mean a school shooting, a church shooting, a public place shooting. It doesn't mean a shooting in south side of Chicago, a drive-by shooting where 4 or 5 people were injured or hit or shot at, or a group of 20 were shot at. It doesn't mean inner city violence. See, they suffer this same issue, but it's not acknowledged. See, if it were acknowledged as a whole and both sides represented fairly, maybe then we could come to a change. Maybe then we could look at it, and if it becomes a universal issue instead of separating that out. The same happens for police shootings. Far more, and again, I'd have to check these statistics. I don't know what they are as of right now. But the last time I looked at the statistics, more Caucasian Americans were shot by police than African Americans. So, why would that not be a unified front? If it's indeed a unjustified police shooting. And it seems often that unjustified police shootings aren't really looked at as much. That the ones that are really kind of brought to the forefront end up that the perpetrator was actually doing something wrong. But there's plenty that aren't. And also there's plenty of situations where police officers do the right thing, and But if rebellion's going to be selective, if rebellion's going to be racist, then what good can that rebellion do for the rest of America? I look at, I guess, what my thoughts of rebellion were, and I look at what I perceived standing up for what was right to be when I was younger, to what I look at now, and I'm disillusioned, I'm disheartened. To look for a great speaker, somebody to step up and say, okay, there are injustices going on here. We have issues we need to address as a nation, as a people, as a collective. But we don't get that. It's very polarized, and we're very tribal, and we're very much divided into segments of the population, divided by race, color, religion, sex, sexuality, class. I look at all that division, and I don't understand how we change things for the collective unit of people if we approach them so divided. And I always had this idea, this belief, this, I guess, hope that rebellion was that thing. It was that great equalizer. It was the oppressed standing up against the oppressor. And the oppressed stood unified against a unified oppressor. Well, two things have happened. The oppressed have separated themselves. They've divided themselves. They've divided themselves by race, by religion, by sexuality, by sexual orientation or lack thereof. They've divided themselves, and amongst themselves, they, instead of trying to further the group and try to further humanity, they're trying to further their special interest. And they're splintered. So the rebellion it has no power, it has no reach, it has no influence because it's divided. And who are they trying to attack? They're trying to attack an establishment. But see, they are the ones who force upon the establishment a splintering, a separation, a difference. If you don't know that Dick Cheney and Mike Pence are the same exact thing, then it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for you to make a difference. If you're a Democrat, it's often easy to look at Cheney and go, there's a crooked businessman making a mint being vice president. Well, he's a poor leader, a poor person, a bad person. Mike Pence is all those things. He's an establishment politician. He's a religious fanatic, and he's all those things. And if you can't look at those guys and then look at Gore or Biden and say they're the same thing, it's the same monster. It's just got a different letter preceding the name when it's on TV. It's RRD, but it's the same monster. I mean, it is what it is. I don't think that presidents always go into office with the intentions of being horrible leaders, but I think the establishment that's already there allows them to be, forces them to be, doesn't give them the option. We change presidents every 4 years. Some Congress people and Senate people, and you have politicians in Washington that's been there for 30. You're not rebelling against the 4-year president. You are, but you're not making a difference because he doesn't have a whole lot to say. Should be rebelling against the establishment politicians who are in Washington. But even when it comes to that, can you rebel against them do you know that Pelosi and Mitch McConnell are the same monster? Because if you don't, if you really make a difference, if you split them in two and go, well, no. Abortion will be completely legal or completely illegal when it's no longer a topic that can get somebody elected. When a politician can no longer say, I'm going to be for or against this to get elected, that's when abortion will not be an issue. It's not about right or wrong to them. They don't care. It's not about murder or not murder. It's not. It's about my constituents will support me if I'm against this. Your constituents will support you if you're for this. We use it. It is simply an issue to get us elected. Same-sex marriage was the same thing for years. They weren't respecting same-sex couples. They were using them as fodder to be elected, as a platform to run on. Immigration is the same thing. Immigration was not a vote-getting policy for years. President George Bush Sr., Bill Clinton, President George Bush, President Barack Obama, and President Donald Trump all have the same outlook on immigration. Okay? They all said basically the same things while running for president. Of course, none of them accused all Mexicans of being rapists and murderers, and some of them said it more eloquently than others, but they all said it. They all said the same thing. The same exact thing, almost verbatim. But now it's an issue. Now it's a platform. And I don't know for how long, but for the foreseeable future, there will be no change in immigration. No real significant change. Probably still going to be the same people that Barack Obama put in cages are the same people that Trump put in cages, and are the same people that the next president will put in cages, regardless of policy, regardless of party. It's about the vote. We're fear mongers. Our news is fear mongering. We're fear mongers. It's what we are as a country, as a world. I don't know that every other nation works the way we work. I assume that China works this way in a different direction. Same with Russia. But it's fear mongering. And how do you rebel against that? How do you stand up against that? It seems easy. It seems like it's a simple answer. You just rebel. Stand up against Trump. But if you do that, what about the fact that the left is just as bad and do just as much stuff? They're equal. Well, okay, then let's just stand up against the left. Well, if you stand up against the left, what who's keeping the right in check? Because, Cheney could decide to run for president one day. You definitely want to keep the right in check. You could get Mitt Romney for president. You definitely want to keep the right in check. But then you stand up against the right. And only the right, and you focus on the right. Well, I don't want Biden as president. I don't want Clinton as president. I don't understand. Is it possible to say, let's demand more options than Coke and Pepsi? Let's ask for a Sprite and a Dr. Pepper. I've heard it said that the parties will never allow that. They can't stop it. They can't stop it. Especially the Republican Party, and I'll tell you why. And this has become a political podcast, something I said I'd never do. But the Republican Party definitely can't stop it. Because the Republican Party did not want Donald Trump. The Republican establishment didn't want Donald Trump. The Democrats didn't want Donald Trump. Nobody wanted Donald Trump in the political platform. Nobody. The establishment Republicans, on the day that he won the Republican nomination, would have taken Hillary Clinton as their president hand over fist that day. Problem is, politics is about ride or die, son. And once it finally gets in to Trump versus Hillary, you got to throw all your eggs in one basket, because it's not about who's right or wrong. It's not about who's doing what's best for the country. It's about supporting your party. Now, behind closed doors, I don't think Trump and Hillary love each other, but I think most of those people do. They don't care. It's a cash grab. It's a way to make money. It's a way to get paid by special interests. It's a way to promote your company. It's a way to be Bill Clinton and get paid millions of dollars to go around the world with a pedophile and to go talk at colleges and stuff once you retire. And to have a library made where they put a pen that you used to write NAFTA and destroyed 2 countries for the most part, and put it on display. So how do you rebel? How do you rebel against that? Well, it's simple. It really is. It's simple and it's logical. Rebellion doesn't have to be violent. Rebellion doesn't have to be grand in any way. In the United States of America, rebellion is monetary. That's it. Rebellion is monetary. You have to affect the income possibilities of the thing you're rebelling against. And you have to rebel against thoughts and ideas. You have to rebel against hatred, and you have to rebel against things that are dangerous to humanity. Not against one party, not against politics, not against factions. That's not to say, well, you shouldn't rebel against the Ku Klux Klan as a faction. Of course you should. Just like you should Antifa. But you should not make the decision, well, I'm going to leave this one hate group alone because it's minority based, which it's really not. It's a bunch of white, really rich young kids, millennials, who are protesting about things they know nothing about, and the few people who have actual insight into it are outnumbered and outvoiced significantly. But I'm going to ignore them and only go against this other hate group. I'm going to get behind something that says Black Lives Matter instead of All Lives Matter. That's not rebellion. Rebellion is to say human life matters. That's rebellion. Rebellion is to say human life matters. The lives of the children in Darfur, they matter. The lives of protesters in China, they matter. The lives of African Americans in South Side of Chicago, they matter. The lives of white miners in Eastern Kentucky, they matter. The lives of immigrant Latino workers in California, they matter. Those people matter. Politicians don't matter. You are a civil servant. You work for us. But instead, you're working for yourself and you're making a lot of money. So rebellion is simple. The ideal of rebellion is simple. I don't agree with everything Rage Against the Machine says. No love for communism whatsoever. No love for Che whatsoever. But I love the spirit. I love the music. I love the intensity in which they work in. And if that same spirit, love, and intensity could be put into trying to change the country for the better by all people, that's a good thing. So you affect the monetary impact that these people have. We really did limit spending on presidential elections. Let's make it a federally funded thing. I mean, how much money should it take to get elected president? Why should it cost money? Why should somebody like Trump or Bloomberg be able to buy the presidency with ad dollars? You know, I mean, if you want to play devil's advocate, there you go. But on the same hand, you can't turn around and say, well, you know, that's because they're billionaires or they're this or that. Well, I mean, I'm sure they're pretty rich now, but the Clintons weren't always extremely rich. But they paid their way to the White House just like everyone else does, just like the Bushes did, just like Cheney, just like anybody else. Special interest groups pay your way there. Lobbyists pay your way there. Why would lobbyists be allowed? You know, we take all this money we spend paying for these politicians for their... You say, I've heard the argument, well, you get what you pay for. We want to pay exorbitant amounts of money and give all these benefit packages to these politicians so that we get the best of the best. We're not getting the best of the best. If anything, we're getting the worst of the worst. So your theory's failing. It's going backwards. So we rebel monetarily. If we demand loudly enough for a change, there will be a change, but it has to be a unified voice. Doesn't mean people have to agree. That's where things get lost. If you start to threaten taking away the tribalistic beliefs and functions of our society, people get scared and they revert back. They revert back to going to their idealistic individual sides. But it doesn't have to be that way. The left and the right can demand together that there be a third option, a fourth option. I've not always done so, but in the last few years I have most definitely always voted for the third option. I want a different option. I'm not satisfied with A and B. I want C, and as soon as I get C, I'm going to want D. The more it's splintered, and it has to be truly different. And it's not yet. These third parties aren't truly different yet. But it's a start into the right place. Term limits, though, are the key. Term limits are the key to rebellion. And I know that sounds so odd. It's working within the system. It seems, shouldn't picket lines and signs and all these, you know, large gatherings and events and you know, these protests, that should be the key to rebellion, and they help, and they're a part of getting there. But the real key to rebellion, one of the first things, is term limits. Do the research, look into it. Those are the keys to rebellion. Term limits, that affects them monetarily. This is a long 30, 40 minutes of rambling, I know. It's something I had on my mind. It's something I really wanted to talk about. And whether it is or isn't a good show, I don't know. But I don't know. It's something that means a lot to me. To be truthful and honest and rebellious to some degree is very important, and I've not always been that. Sometimes I've given in. But I try to be thoughtful and considerate and to look at things from all points of view, and to me that's one of the most rebellious things you can do, especially today, here and now. But thanks for listening. You can email me at authorjperk@gmail.com. Facebook is authorjperkins. The Twitter is @jperk, PERK213. Instagram is author_J Perkins. YouTube is J Perkins. And the Minds app, which I've not even been on there in the last couple of days. The Minds app, I don't know what this thing really is, and to be honest with you, I don't know that I'm liking it, is @JPerk213. Books are available at the Red Spotted Newt in Hazard, Kentucky, or online on Amazon if you don't live in Eastern Kentucky. Check out my buddies over at Raving Television Addict. It's a good podcast. I don't know. Do something out of the ordinary. Shake something up. Be a modern rebel. Let's see what we can fix.